Hi, everybody, and welcome to the LA Strong Return and Rebuild community briefing. Here we are on Tuesday at 5 p.m. and Mayor Karen Bass and team and our various partners at state and county government are here to provide you some key updates. We appreciate you joining us as usual. As a reminder, we do have interpretation options for all those who would like to partake. First, we have American Sign Language that is available if you click on the globe at the bottom of your screen or click on the More button. You should be able to see the interpretation globe, and then click on American Sign Language and you'll see a video pop up on your screen. For closed captioning, you are welcome to click the link in your chat and the closed captioning will appear after a brief delay. Hope that helps you participate in all the ways needed. As a reminder, we do have the videos and recordings of these webinars, and tonight's webinar will be recorded and put on Mayor Karen Bass's YouTube page. You can find that at the QR code on your screen, as well as going to YouTube and typing in Mayor Karen Bass. Tonight, we have a variety of updates. First, of course, we'll hear from Mayor Karen Bass. Then we'll hear an update around sustainable insurance strategies from our Department of Insurance at the state level. We'll hear from County Public Health about soil testing. We'll hear from our Army Corps of Engineers around debris removal. And then we'll wrap up with a brief update from Caltrans regarding PCH. With that, we'll go ahead and introduce our Mayor of Los Angeles, Mayor Karen Bass. Oh, Mayor, you're on mute.
Okay. Hello? Can you hear me? Okay,
We can hear
good.
you.
Sorry about that. I was having a little technical difficulty, but listen, good afternoon to everyone. Thank you for once again joining for the webinars. As always, I do hope the webinars are helpful to you, and I do hope you will tell us if they are not, what we should do better, who you need to hear from, what challenges you are having. And so I do believe that everybody knows that this is the final day to sign up for debris removal, to either opt in or to opt out. And I have to say that the Army Corps of Engineers has just been doing a great job, really an incredible job, way ahead of what was anticipated. And I believe as of this morning, there's more than 550 properties that have had debris completely cleared and have received the final sign-off, a required step before permits are issued. I will say that I got a note from our supervisor, Lindsay Horvath, that there are still 206 households in the Palisades that have not either opted out or opted in. And so I just hope, given the incredible organization that exists in the Palisades, that you have reached out to the owners of the properties to ask them to please sign up. We have certainly reached out through emails and any other way that we have found to communicate with them. The Army Corps of Engineers has also cleared all debris from 3 schools in the Palisades, and that was certainly ahead of expectations. So I just want to encourage you to please contact your neighbors and ask them to sign up. Since so many properties have been cleared, we certainly expect a rush of individuals ready to rebuild. And I want to ask you again how our one-stop center is going. Hopefully you have been there. Hopefully it is working. Please let us know. I do want you to know that I met with the city attorney today to talk about fee waivers, and we are moving forward on that. I know I have told many of you that it's going to take us a little bit, and I have to ask for a little more time because we are learning what we have to do to waive fees. We can't just unilaterally do that in the mayor's office. The council needs to be involved, and I will be calling upon the council through an executive directive soon to do that. And I certainly know that your councilwoman, Tracy Park, will be leading the effort on the council. You might have seen the new public-private partnership that was announced last week with JJ Redick and his LA Strong Sports Foundation and Rick Caruso and Steadfast LA to redesign and rebuild the Palisades Rec Center. I certainly have been in conversation with both to let them know that whatever is needed from the city to get the Palisades Rec Center rebuilt better, whatever is needed from the city, we will be there to make sure that it happens. So thank you once again for joining. And again, I just hope that you give us the feedback to make sure that these webinars are productive, and anything else that you need, that you please let us know. If there's things that are missing in our one-stop center, let us know. We will keep you posted about the fee waivers. And I look forward to meeting with other residents in the Palisades, like I did last week, who are already starting the rebuilding process. That was very encouraging to see that happen. And I hope to meet with many more of your neighbors when the rebuilding process begins. So thank you very much. And Jenny, am I introducing the councilwoman?
Councilmember Park is actually in Maui, learning from those in Hawaii who have gone through fires in the past and rebuilt. And so she is not able to join us tonight. So we'll go ahead and proceed with the rest of the program.
Well, I look forward to hearing from her afterwards and lessons learned from Maui. So thank you, everyone, and we will see you next week.
Excellent. All right. So next up, we have a presentation on sustainable insurance strategies by Rob from the Department of Insurance in the state of California. Rob, take it away.
Thank you, Jenny, and thank you, Mary Bass, for having me on today's webinar. So as the debris is continuing to clear in the Palisades and the Altadena areas and across Southern California, and as homeowners begin to rebuild, we understand there's going to be a lot of questions about the uncertainty of the insurance market in the aftermath of these fires. And, we've heard a lot of concerns about, once rebuild is complete, what is the insurance market going to look like and what insurance options are going to be available. So the first thing I wanted to make sure that everyone was aware of is this 2025 annual insurance notice. So this notice is sent to insurance companies every year with updates on regulations, relevant code sections, and consumer protections pertaining to residential insurance policies, especially after a declared state of emergency, such as these fires back in this past January. So after a declared state of emergency, residential property insurance companies are required to provide a copy of this notice within 15 calendar days to anyone that has filed a related claim. And this notice captures all of the relevant laws, regulations, code sections that apply to the claim and rebuilding process after a declared state of emergency. And, over the past few months, as we've had these weekly sessions, I've helped answer many of your guys' questions, and a lot of these answers have come directly from this document. So if you haven't already received this notice, you can scan the QR code on the screen, but I also believe Mayor Bass's team is going to drop a link in the chat. But for today's purposes, I wanted to note that under this notice, right now, there's currently an insurance moratorium within the affected areas and the adjacent zip codes of those affected areas by those fires. And that applies to all homeowners in those areas, not just those who had lost their homes or received damage in those areas, but all homeowners residing within those zip codes and adjacent zip codes. And that insurance moratorium is good for 1 year, where homeowners cannot be canceled or non-renewed from their insurance policy until that expiration date in January 6, 2026. In addition, those homes that suffered a total loss are guaranteed 2 annual renewal periods as they take the time to rebuild. But of course, the question is, after this moratorium expires or after rebuilding is complete, what insurance will be available, what options are going to be available out there. So on the next slide, as part of the largest insurance reforms in almost 40 years since Prop 103 was passed in 1988, Insurance Commissioner Ricardo Lara finalized new regulations in December 2024 to support what's called the Sustainable Insurance Strategy, with the goal being to increase insurance availability and stabilize California's insurance market. So under these new regulations, which were finalized in December 2024, insurers in California have committed to writing no less than 85% of the homes and businesses in high fire risk areas and high fire distressed areas across the state of California. Now, as part of this agreement, California has also introduced what are called new climate risk management tools like catastrophe modeling, which have been available for use in every other state in the United States, and is finally available for use in California, which modernizes the risk assessment tools that insurance companies are available to use to more accurately assess risk, insurance risk across the state of California. So right now, 4 of these catastrophe models are currently under review by the department, and we expect insurance companies to implement these new models around June, sometime in the middle of this year. And once insurance companies are able to implement these models, they'll be able to accurately reflect the risk in areas across the state, opening up more insurance policies available across statewide. The commissioners also directed the FAIR Plan to continue hiring more staff to meet the demands and speed up the claims process. I've heard from many of you saying that, it's been tough to get in contact with the FAIR Plan. There's nobody to follow up on claims with. You don't know where you're at in the claims process, and we've directed the FAIR Plan to continue hiring additional staff to meet the demand that they currently have. We've also directed them to maintain a healthy reserve as well as expanding commercial coverage by increasing coverage limits, which we discussed last week. But also the end goal is to depopulate the FAIR Plan and lead consumers back to the open insurance market. We've also hired a ton of new actuaries to help with the rate approval process for rate filing and increase more certainty in the insurance market. So right now, while we can't predict every rate change in California's insurance market, these reforms will make the market more stable and predictable, which will over time help reduce costs in the long run. Now, on the next slide, to support the sustainable insurance strategy, the Department of Insurance is also supporting a package of legislative bills aimed at protecting wildfire survivors, enhancing preparedness for future disasters, and reducing wildfire risk across the state, which is frankly the biggest factor and issue that insurance companies have been taking a look at when deciding to pull out of certain areas and stop writing policies in certain areas. So it's a package of 10 legislative bills that you can scan that QR code or click the link into the chat. I just wanted to highlight a couple of these. The first is the California Safe Homes Act, Assembly Bill 888 by Assemblymember Lisa Calderon, which would establish a grant program for wildfire home mitigation. There's a similar program right now for earthquake mitigation called the Brace and Bolt program, which homeowners can apply through the California Earthquake Authority. Passing of this legislation would implement a similar program within the Department of Insurance that homeowners can apply and use those funds directly towards wildfire mitigation. The Business Insurance Protection Act would expand the insurance moratorium to include commercial properties, businesses, HOAs, and nonprofits. The Eliminate the List Act, which is Senate Bill 495 by Senator Ben Allen. This bill has been something that's been discussed a lot in these town halls as a lot of consumers are facing challenges from their insurance companies requiring them to provide an itemized list of all their lost belongings in order to collect their insurance benefits. And the passing of this Senate bill would eliminate that list and require oh, whoops, it looks like that note is wrong. I should have corrected that. But that Eliminate the List would require insurance companies to pay out 100% of contents coverage without requiring that itemized list. And again, scan the QR code, click on the link in the chat to see what additional regulatory bills are being supported by the Department of Insurance. And then on the last slide here, I just want to wrap things up that I encourage everyone to register for the upcoming LA County Insurance Claims Town Hall next week, hosted by Insurance Commissioner Ricardo Lara on Tuesday, April 22nd at 5 p.m. So, we'll be addressing some of the issues that many of you have been facing with your insurance companies so far, as well as providing guidance on the claims process going forward as the debris continues to clear and rebuilding proceeds. Because, like we said, we've been seeing a lot of issues that a lot of people have been facing with regards to smoke damage, remediation, living expenses, and so forth. And, as rebuilding continues, there's going to be a whole host of issues, and we want to guide you through that process as well. So yeah, encourage everyone to register, submit your questions. The commissioner will be addressing those. And then also I wanted to mention as well, today is that big deadline for the debris removal. I will drop in the chat the commissioner's notice regarding insurance and how insurance works with the debris removal program, just to hopefully answer some of the questions that some of you may still have about insurance and the debris removal program. So yeah, that's all I've got. Hope you guys can attend next week's town hall, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Rob. We really appreciate you joining us, and we will bring you back on for some questions after the remaining presentations. Next up, we're going to hear from Dr. Adam Love from RU Incorporated. This is a study that was conducted by the LA County Department of Public Health on behalf of the multiple fires, Palisades and Eaton Fire. So I'll go ahead and pass it off to Dr. Adam Love.
Great, thank you. We know there's been lots of concerns about impacts from the fire. One of those concerns we know about is the impacts to people's soil as a result of just being in the fire area for the course of these fires. People have asked for soil testing and understand what's going on with the soils. And LA County Department of Public Health has spearheaded doing a representative sampling of soil in both fire areas. We've been out there so far. We have sampled parcels with destroyed homes before any cleanup has occurred. We have sampled parcels after the Army Corps of Engineers has done the soil and debris removal. But mostly what we've done is we've sampled lots of intact homes, both inside the fire area and nearby the outer boundaries of the fire areas in order to understand the potential soil impacts. Next slide. So when we say, we're trying to sort of answer this question for people, what fire-related soil impacts are reasonably expected, primarily at intact properties? That's what we're going to focus on today. When we say representative sampling, we're testing for really what are the primary fire-related chemicals of concern. Those chemicals are heavy metals, and there's a whole list of heavy metals that we've tested for. There are organic chemicals called polyaromatic hydrocarbons, or PAHs, and we've measured for a whole suite of those. Those are sort of the black char that sort of forms when you might, burn something. And then the third category are called dioxins, and again, that's another organic chemical that can form in burn events. All three of these classes of chemicals are chemicals that are persistent in soils, and so if they are in your soils, they would likely be able to stay there for a long time. Next slide. The types of parcels that we have sampled intact were broken down into the sort of three categories. We have sampled minor or affected parcels that are inside the fire zone. We have sampled parcels that have no damage inside the fire zone, and we've sampled parcels with no damage that are adjacent to the fire zones. These are all parcels where there's no planned cleanup. And so understanding the soil conditions at these homes is especially of interest. Next slide. So right now, we've received about 90% of the data for the intact homes, but we've started to be able to see patterns that we don't think will change with the last 10% coming in. And so we've made it a priority to communicate what we know as fast as we know it. Overall, in the two fire areas, we've sampled about 780 intact parcels, and we've taken 5 samples per parcel. So that's roughly 4,000 samples that we've taken between the two fire areas. You can see on the right, our sampling strategy was to divide each fire area into a grid and then collect, as we could, equal number of samples where we were able to get access in each one of the highlighted green cells of the grid. Though each of those green cells are locations where there was at least some homes that were available for a sampling. You can see on the bottom, the table shows how many samples we actually took of each type and in each area. And with the data that we got back, what our first step was to compare the results of the soil concentrations to what California's DTSC has for residential screening levels for soil. For some of the chemicals, there weren't screening levels from DTSC, and in those cases, we defaulted to using US EPA's residential screening levels. Next slide. We're using residential screening levels, and we're looking at those screening levels overall for each fire area, as well as the represent, the overall screening levels within each of one of those grid cells that I showed on the previous map. The reason we're using these screening levels as an initial evaluation is because these residential screening levels represent concentrations in soil that are safe for a lifetime of exposure, even for the most sensitive residential populations like children and pregnant women. What that means, though, is that these screening levels aren't cleanup levels. While getting below a screening level is health protective, being above a screening level doesn't mean that a cleanup is required, but instead suggests that additional evaluations are needed. Next slide. So let's jump into looking at the Palisades data. Again, this is a table of the percent of samples within the Palisades area that exceeded these residential screening levels. On the left of this table is the list of different chemicals where we found even a single exceedance. We sampled for 2 or 3 times as many chemicals or more than is shown on this table. But for all those other chemicals, there was not a single exceedance of a residential screening level in all of the samples that we collected. So the percent exceedances are the numbers that are in the table for the different categories of sample conditions. And so you can see on the left are some of the sample results for samples that we collected from properties with destroyed structures, both the ash and the soil. All the way to the right, you can see samples that we took at areas way outside of the fire area. But today, what we're focusing on are the samples that are in the red box. These are the samples for parcel conditions of intact properties, both within the fire zone and adjacent to the fire zone. When you look at the percent exceedances, most of the numbers are pretty small. Arsenic has the highest percentage of exceedance in the 10 to 25% range. And that's not uncommon in California because arsenic is a natural part of our soils. And so exceeding residential screening levels actually happens all the time, depending on the specifics of the geology. All of the other chemicals that are listed have exceedance levels that are fairly low, all less than 10%. Now, you can get exceedance in soils for all sorts of reasons. You can get it because of different things that have happened on a property over the lifetime of the property, like shooting off fireworks in the yard or dumping some used oil in the grass. All of those things could potentially result in having an exceedance that would have nothing to do with the fire area. So when we look at the data, we're really looking for, are there things that happened at the scale of the fire that we can see in the data? So the other way that we want to look at it, though, is to look at it more specifically in the grid cells. So we're going to focus on the 4 chemicals that will have the arrows next to it that had the highest exceedance level of samples that we collected. Next slide. So the first one is arsenic. You can see the percent exceedance levels on this graph are represented by how dark the shaded color is in each one of the grids. And so you can see in the case of arsenic, there's quite a variation in where you see percent of samples that exceed these residential screening levels. Most of Palisades doesn't have very high exceedance levels at all, but especially up in that upper right northeast corner of Palisades, you see some particularly high exceedance levels. Now, that doesn't appear to be fire related, or at least isolated if it is related to the fire. It would have been upwind, and you don't really see those sort of impacts further downwind anywhere close to that magnitude. So we don't know specifically what the cause is of the exceedance up in that area, but it seems to be something that's fairly localized and requires more investigation. Next slide. Similarly, when we look at cadmium, you can see most of the Palisades area didn't have any cadmium exceedances anywhere throughout the area, except down in the southwest corner of the Palisades area. Again, you can see there's one cell in the grid that has exceptionally high exceedance values and some ones nearby it that have higher higher exceedance levels, but overall, that doesn't appear to be wide scale sort of fire related smoke issues, right? That again appears to be something that's happening locally in that area. And we don't know whether or not at this time, whether or not that was something that was there prior to the fire or whether or not the fire exacerbated those local impacts. Next slide. This is lead. You may have seen in the news that in the Eaton area, we were able to identify higher than expected lead impacts downwind of the Eaton fire. We don't see those impacts here in Palisades. The lead exceedances in Palisades remain low throughout the fire area. Next slide. Benzoate-pyrene. Benzoate-pyrene is one of those PAHs or polyaromatic hydrocarbons that I talked about that sort of represent the sort of black char of organic material that can be in smoke. You can see again, low level exceedances across the fire area, but there does seem to be where that arsenic exceedance was, there does seem to be some cells up there that also have relatively higher benzoate-pyrene exceedances. Again, we don't know specifically what the cause of that is, but if that was something that was, if the benzoate-pyrene was, part of all of the wildfire smoke, we would have expected to see those impacts throughout the fire area, and we just don't. Next slide. So, looking at the data that's come in so far, we saw real differences between what we saw in Eaton and Palisades, both in terms of the chemical types and the patterns of exceedances in the soils. But what we didn't see was widespread contamination from potentially fire-related chemicals. We did see isolated areas where heavy metals and PAHs concentrations were above screening levels, but we don't yet know what the source of those localized impacts are. And those types of impacts aren't consistent with sort of the community-wide impacts from fire-related smoke plumes. That was the main focus of our investigation. Next slide. So this assessment is meant to be a representative analysis of soil conditions for intact parcels. We didn't sample every parcel, and individual parcels can have unique factors that result in differences compared to what this data represents. The reported results are not intended to imply cleanup is necessary, but are intended to identify areas where potentially requiring more investigation. Now, people concerned about their specific property can consult an environmental professional about what evaluations for their property make sense. And community members are encouraged to take the appropriate precautions if your home is in one of those areas where soil sample exceedances of screening thresholds have been observed. LA County Department of Public Health has a FAQs for best practices to minimize exposure to these potential hazards. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Love, and we will come back to you with some questions after a couple more slides here. With that, I'll go ahead and introduce U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, Colonel Brian Saucer.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity as always. Colonel Brian Saucer, Commander of the Emergency Field Office over here in the Palisades Impact Area. That includes Los Angeles City, the county unincorporated areas in the city of Malibu. So the slide that you have before you, I'll get into in just a moment. But to the mayor's points, she's absolutely accurate with the numbers that she provided. Most importantly, as you all know, today is the deadline for opting in or opting out. In the city of Los Angeles, the Pacific Palisades, we are in and around 200 that have not declared. And so if you do have a neighbor, certainly encourage them to declare opt in or opt out. And then we can continue to move forward. I think what's great on this slide right here is it kind of gives you an idea of cleared properties. So the mayor talked about final sign off, the number around 550 in the city of Los Angeles. There's a series of steps when we get that final paperwork signed off and some other physical clearance measures that we still have to do, which is essentially erosion control and some hazardous trees removal. But the larger number, when you see that number on the site on the screen, we're actually above 1,600 as I'm briefing you right now. That's cleared sites. 1,600 cleared sites means that the visual debris has all been removed to include the soil. That's what clearance means. And when we get to the final sign off, that's really erosion control, trees, and then final paperwork. So that's the differences in the number. The 1,600 represents cleared sites for the entire fire impact area of the Palisades fire. City of Los Angeles is around 1,300 cleared sites. I think what's of greater note and the interest for everyone on this call, perhaps, is that we are now routinely clearing over 50 sites per day. And so we believe conservatively the Corps of Engineers is going to clear around 5,000 parcels in this fire impact area. So simple math, that's about 1% a day that we are now clearing in this mission, in this endeavor over here, which is great news, because we assess right now we're about 30% complete, cleared properties as I'm speaking to you now, and then we're going to get 1% per day. So by the time we get to mid-May, we would anticipate approaching that 60% complete mark at that time. You may have heard about the governor's declaration over the weekend concerning PCH. Certainly when we're working an optimization problem, the reduction of constraints is helpful to our efforts. But in light of this, we are surging efforts along PCH in adjacent properties, both seaside and on the mountainside as well, to include some of the canyon neighborhoods adjacent to PCH. And the idea here is to complete PCH with all clearance operations that the government is responsible for before you get to Memorial Day weekend, before you get to the end of May. And that is why we're surging assets to do that right now. I say that for those folks in the Pacific Palisades, we're maintaining the same levels of output in the Pacific Palisades while we also surge. How do we do that? We're bringing in more crews. So we're bringing in more crews to supplement what we already do have on site in order to get after PCH. So like to tell folks that, the idea here is when we get to the summer months, PCH is cleared. And then, we're in and around 70% clearance at that point when we get to the end of May. So that's what it's going to look like. That doesn't include opt-out properties that are actively working in the fire impact area. I have, visually, I can see neighborhoods that very much look like they're 50, 60% cleared. And a lot of that has to do with working with our partners that are opt-outs as well. And they're doing about 20% of the properties. So a lot of numbers that I just threw at you, but the bottom line is we're clearing about 1% per day. We're about 30% right now. Mid-May will be 60% while we're focusing on PCH, given this opportunity to clear it as fast as possible with adjacent properties. And that's I certainly think it's been helpful for the optimization problem provided by the governor and the mayor as we work through this difficult problem set. The last thing I would like to do is introduce my replacement. It's been a pleasure serving each and every one of you in this very, very important mission. But my good friend of really 30 years, I've known him, my roommate at West Point, Colonel Jeff Palazzini, he'll be taking the helm right here, fantastic officer, and he will close this mission out. Pending your questions, I look forward to seeing you all again briefly before I leave this weekend. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Colonel Saucer, for your service to the Palisades and to our country. And we certainly have benefited from your leadership and look forward to continue to work with your colleagues and West Point roommate. And we talked a lot about PCH. So last presenter tonight, Eric from Caltrans. Tell us what we need to know about PCH.
Sure, thanks. And thank you, Colonel Saucer, for all your work with on PCH. And as you noted, Governor Newsom announced over the weekend that PCH will reopen by the end of May. Currently, PCH is closed to those without burn passes between Carbon Beach Terrace in Malibu to Chautauqua and Trotta Drive in Pacific Palisades. That's where people go through those checkpoints to get through PCH between Malibu and the city of Los Angeles. So by the end of May, we will reopen PCH. So a really big thanks to our partner agencies, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, City of LA, City of Malibu, LA County Public Works. I know I'm missing a few, but for definitely also the utilities for all of their work as well. And so, when we do, when all of the partner agencies sign off on reopening, our traffic plan will be similar to what we had in the past when we were briefly open to the public, one lane open in each direction. that will be the limit. The speed limit will be at 25 miles per hour. Traffic signals will be flashing on red, so you will need to stop at each traffic signal. And also keep in mind that work will be continuing. You will still be seeing some crews out there. Our crews will be working along Pacific Coast Highway, definitely to be repairing some catchment walls and some other infrastructure that was damaged by the fire. So please take note of that. Even for those who have burn passes, you're seeing a lot of activity right now when you're driving on PCH. So please drive safely out there. Look out for all the crews that are out there, and drive safely. And we're making a lot of progress. So thank you to all the partners for making this happen. And stay tuned for more information. We'll keep on releasing that on our social media pages and on our website, on the news portion of our website.
Thank you, Eric. And I did forget one additional presenter tonight from FEMA. Michael, take it away.
Good evening, everybody. Mike Peacock here from FEMA. And again, I wanted to emphasize that today, 11:59 p.m. Pacific time, is the last time that you're able to submit your ROEs. So please get them in before 11:59 p.m. Pacific time. There is expanded eligibility for those owner-occupied residential properties, including condominiums, duplexes, and townhouses. So if you are an owner-occupied for one of those types of properties, get your ROE in and get it in before midnight, before 11:59 p.m. this evening. I also wanted to remind people that for those that still need assistance with housing, such as rental assistance from FEMA, that type of assistance is available. If you are still out of your home and your alternative living expenses are beginning to run out, please contact FEMA, stop by one of the disaster recovery centers, and speak to one of our representatives. Also, please read your FEMA letter carefully. It contains important information about why your claim may have been denied. So typically it's something pretty simple, such as missing documentation, or something such as the insurance settlement letter that needs to be presented to us so that we are not duplicating another benefit that's paid for by insurance. A reminder that the DRCs continue to remain open. There are new hours that started this week, starting Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. And then on Saturdays, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. They continue to be closed on Sundays. And that is it from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. I'm sorry. Thank you, Michael. Appreciate it. So Michael shared the new hours at the Disaster Recovery Center. There are new hours, just to repeat, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday, Saturday 9 to 4, and closed on Sundays. They are still open through the rest of the month, so please do make time to go down and talk to agencies. Still about 70 local, state, and federal agencies on site. Again, Pico and Westwood is the closest to the Palisades at the old Westside Pavilion, now UCLA Research Park. Next slide. As a reminder, we also have our one-stop rebuilding center. Also, the hours of 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday, closed both Saturday and Sunday. This is a centralized location to get your answers to questions about rebuilding, the process that is involved in rebuilding, as well as to accelerate that process. You can go quickly from department to department as opposed to waiting online or on the phone to get answers individually. So we do hope that you can come down, and there is free parking, no appointments needed. Walk-ins are welcome. Next slide. In addition, we are encouraging all Palisadians to sign up for Engaged California. This is a partnership with the governor's office where we will be discussing key issues in regards to the rebuild, community issues that you may want to weigh in on. Everything from checkpoints to community gathering centers to the order of operations in regards to the rebuild. We look forward to engaging there with you, and we hope that you'll sign up and play a key role in providing feedback and insights about both what you would like to discuss as well as your opinions on key policy matters. With that, we'll go ahead and transition into our Q&A. I'll start with some questions for Dr. Love and some of our representatives from LA County Department of Public Health. There is a question from Dana Harris. Dana is indicating that based on a very lengthy conversation on Nextdoor, it seems that those of us with standing homes could benefit from a little bit more information from Department of Public Health on the significant lead exposure that many of us have in the interior of our homes. So I'm not sure if this is a question for Dr. Love or Dr. Quick, who's also joining us as Chief Medical Officer with the Department of Public Health, but this is in regards to not soil, but inside interior of homes. Dr. Quick, do you want to go ahead and take a stab at answering that one?
Yeah, great question. And what I would offer folks on this one is, essentially each property is going to be in a very unique sort of situation. And what I would really urge folks to, number one, is we have detailed guidance on our website related to cleanup and additionally significant guidance on there related to lead. Lead inside home is sort of a different question than what we were answering with Dr. Love's study here. For individuals that have brought in somebody to do the lead testing, I would recommend that they follow the remediation recommendations that have come out from that individual, but also we do have guidance out there related to lead, and that may be lead that folks have picked up outside. It could be lead related to gardening and so forth. We have guidance out there. I'm going to say some just basics on this one. Surfaces in homes, if there were to be any sort of lead dust or so forth that had gotten in cleaning, and cleaning with wet methods is a way to remove that. Outdoors, we want to be very careful. If you have a known lead source of tracking that into the home, you can do things to minimize that. If you have small children, of course, I want to reiterate that we are particularly concerned about lead exposure for kids and pregnant women. Those are some of the priority populations. Making sure individuals wash their hands, particularly kids that do a lot of crawling around, putting their hands into things, into their mouth, frequent hand washing. Outdoor equipment, if you have a known lead issue, would be washing out equipment, play areas, and so forth that kids are sort of touching. But I would urge individuals, if they've gotten testing done inside for lead, to follow sort of the recommendations that are coming from that expert that they've been working with.
Thank you very much. And we do have a question from Timothy Schneider. Timothy is asking, first off, can you remind us who paid for the RU study? And could RU please resupply the slides overlaid on a street map? So we're happy to help with that here in the city of LA if useful. It's seeming a number of comments are saying it was difficult to know exactly where the areas were on the visuals provided. So is it possible to get that blown up in some way on a street map? And then finally, what health dangers accompany the low-level exceedances? So if you could repeat that information, that'd be very helpful. Who paid for the study? Is there a way to get streets overlaid on the map? And then what dangers accompany low-level exceedances?
Right. So funds for the study have come through LA County Department of Public Health. We are working to get overlays of the grid and things like that into LA County Department of Public Health's GIS system. It just, we've gotten the information out so far as quickly as we can. There's going to be more analysis that we do, and we're getting these things in place to try to make sure and share this information as best we can. But we sort of prioritize getting the results out more so than necessarily having it all packaged up with a bow ready for public consumption on the website, but we're working on that as we speak. And then these low-level exceedances, typically if they're low level, sort of, just a little bit above these residential screening levels, an assessment probably would not suggest that there would be any, additional risk. But that's really what you want to have a professional come in and assess your particular circumstance. We're looking at this at a larger scale as ways to help advise, what are the right things to be looking for and where is the right places to be looking for them.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're gonna have one more question for the public health team here. Donna Vaccarino is asking, why was asbestos not on the list?
There's a long list of chemicals, even longer than what we did, that could be tested for. What we chose, what are considered the sort of most likely chemicals associated with wildfires. Asbestos in soils is actually particularly difficult to measure as sensitive. It's much easier to measure asbestos in air samples or surface, sort of hard surface samples. And so we felt like we would have gotten, that we were able to get the best measure of fire-related impacts with the set of chemicals that we ended up choosing.
Thank you very much. And one final question for this crew. Robert Moore is asking, how do we get our soil tested? We understand this was sampling, not 100% of everybody got their soil tested, but I know you all are familiar with some additional resources. If an individual would like to get their soil tested, what do you recommend?
So I can offer a little bit and then Dr. Love can jump in as well. We do have a list of labs that folks can go to. We have that on our website. Would really urge people, if they're working with a specialist, an environmental consultant, to follow through with that so that that individual can not only inform what is right for testing on your property, but any sort of remediation that might be needed. But we do have references on our website where folks can go for certified labs.
Very good. So go ahead and check out the Department of Public Health website for more information on that. And we appreciate both Dr. Love and Dr. Quick for your time and expertise and the results to the study. We're going to go ahead and transition to some questions for the Department of Insurance. Rob, if you wouldn't mind coming on screen. One question from Helen and Suzanne is, basically, do we have to continue to pay for our insurance when we're not living there and our homes were unfortunately burned down? Do we need to renew our policies in order to continue to rebuild the rebuild process?
Sure. No, this is a great question. And, the commissioner actually addressed this like really early on in the process because we were getting a lot of questions about this. So the commissioner's advice was that everyone should still keep their insurance policies that they have. At the very least, you need to maintain at least liability coverage for your property in case someone were to get injured on the premises of your lot. That could be a liability claim and you still need coverage for that. But also if you have a mortgage and your lender is going to require insurance on that property still, you'll still need to keep your insurance policy as well. But also, you can talk to your insurer and your insurance agent about adjusting your coverage, about, maybe reducing coverage that you don't really need right now during the rebuilding process while maintaining that minimum liability coverage. And then as far as the other part of the question goes, your loss is covered under your original insurance policy. So if you decide not to renew that policy in the future, your loss is still covered by your initial claim that you filed initially. But again, our advice is to continue and maintain a policy, at least liability only. And if you have a mortgage, you're still required to keep that on.
Thank you, Rob. Appreciate that clarification.
Yeah.
Christina Dolan is asking, can anything else be done to help us get total loss inventories waived with all insurance companies?
Yeah, I mean, this has been tough. And again, it's another one of these things that we've been noticing pretty much every week and a lot of questions about this. And unfortunately, right now, the law only requires insurance companies to pay a minimum of 30% of their contents coverage without an itemized list. Now, of course, the insurance commissioner had encouraged all insurance companies to go above and beyond that. And we, in fact, published a list of insurance companies who are paying more than 75% of that contents coverage without requiring an itemized list. But unfortunately, like we said, we don't, due to current laws, we can't really force insurance companies to do more than that. So that's why there's proposed legislation, which unfortunately would not be retroactive. I saw that question coming up. Most likely would be going forward. But for now, yeah, I mean, the insurance commissioner has been doing everything he can. He fully believes that, yeah, it's just not right to have people go back and categorize everything that they lost. Can be an extremely emotional process. And, you know, many insurance companies have been paying above and beyond that, but unfortunately, some of them have not.
Thank you, Rob. And last question from Andy Sands. Andy is indicating that he has a surviving house in the Palisades Marquez Knolls area. Unfortunately, Andy has received a notice from the California Fair Plan canceling his upcoming renewal in July based on hedges being too high. Is this legal? And then additionally, another concern regarding California Fair Plan refusing to pay for cleaning and smoke damage and wanting him to return to his home. This is seen to be unsafe, Andy says, and what can be done to get the Fair Plan to honor their obligations?
Sure. So the first question, as far as that receiving that cancellation or non-renewal notice, so as I mentioned earlier, those areas in the Palisades and adjacent zip codes are currently under an insurance moratorium. It's possible that notice got sent in error. Definitely give us a call so we can look into it, but most likely that should not apply because, like we said, that insurance moratorium does not expire until January 2026. That non-renewal or cancellation notice should not be applicable. As far as the smoke damage, yeah, again, as I mentioned, this is something that we've been facing a lot and hearing a lot from residents in the Palisades with the Fair Plan not covering smoke damage. And, you know, from the Department of Insurance inspectives, you know, we are requiring insurance companies to fully investigate smoke damage, doing all proper testing and fully investigating that to investigate those claims. It's possible through their investigation that they found that it wasn't feasible to be covered under their policy. But if you don't agree with their findings or you don't feel they properly tested or investigated those smoke damage, definitely give us a call and file a complaint so we can investigate on your behalf.
Thank you, Rob. Appreciate that and certainly appreciate the partnership of your office and Commissioner Lara in regards to advocating for all of our constituents, Palisades residents, on a variety of different insurance topics. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Colonel Saucer, we have a few questions for you before you depart on your final webinar with us, which we appreciate all of the time that you've invested here and of course in the field. We have a question from Michael Wilson. Michael is asking, it's been over 4 weeks and toxic asbestos ash piles remain on our property. This has been tested and concluded that this is indeed dangerous. I believe that Michael is indicating that Michael has opted in, but is curious if at this point Michael should opt out to expedite the process. So could you talk a little bit about this? If there is some type of new pile of ash on a property, and I believe that Michael is hoping to get this removed as soon as possible. What should Michael do?
Yeah, so I'm not aware of a new pile that would have been added to anyone's property. Certainly, we're respecting private property out there for everyone involved. As I stated earlier, we're about 30% cleared up in the Palisades right now, and ticking more every day. With, you know, like I said earlier, getting around to 70% done by May. So if you have opted into the process, there's a lot of precursors that are going on behind the curtain. Hazardous site assessment. There's going to be the certified asbestos consultant that does survey the property and then test the property. Then we have to get the testing results. There might be an abatement process. So even when somebody is opted into the process, we are getting in to you. But I can't guarantee that we're going to get to you. We haven't gotten to you apparently in the last 4 weeks. I would encourage that individual, and we'll post it online again here for the hotline and the email as well, to re-articulate those concerns, because there may be some particulars of this property that I'm unaware of. It's likely on our what we call runway, if it's been an opt-in and we're going to come and get to your property. But to date, again, we still got about 70% to do 1% per day. We're getting there, and we will get to you. But I would encourage you still to contact the hotline with any particulars that I'm not fully answering the question right now, if I'm not.
Excellent. So reach out directly and talk through your specific case. Very good. We have a question from Melissa Standish. Melissa is asking, essentially expressing a concern that when PCH is opened, that may slow down trucks and debris removal and service workers coming in and out of the Palisades. Will this hamper the rebuild efforts and the debris removal efforts? Colonel Saucer, I know you talked a little bit about the phasing of that in terms of trying to get as much done on PCH as possible. Can you speak to that a little bit more?
Thankfully, with the partners with Caltrans in the city of Los Angeles and the law enforcement agencies that are out there, we are looking at, as we move closer to Memorial Day, where we're going to be. So if you think of it as a bell curve, we're peak bell curve right now in terms of output, April and May. By the time we get towards the end of May, we're going to be on the downward slope in terms of output. And so therefore, likely we're seeing peak trucks right now. So that'll be partially helpful, is that we're going to have less trucks on the road by that point. Other than that, we are working with Caltrans and all the other partners on what are some other efficiencies that we can find when PCH were to come open. That could be potentially a dedicated lane. That may be some altering of some hours. That may be some, we may ask for some utilization of more parking space down on the beaches to potentially preload some of our materials before we move. So there's different avenues by which we're going to be able to approach when we get to that point. But we're working that. So as we surge right now, we're also planning for what does it look like when PCH does open. But it's an excellent question. We're all very aware of it. And we are working with different agencies to include some traffic studies to kind of help us understand how we can be more efficient, not only now, but in the future with an open PCH.
Thank you very much, Colonel Saucer. And again, we appreciate your service. And you have many positive comments in the chat saying how much people have appreciated you, your openness, your directness, as well as your service in leading the way with debris removal here. So all the best to you and your family.
I really appreciate
with
that.
that,
Thank you very much.
Yes, with that, we're going to move to close. We are here at the top of the hour. Appreciate everybody's time. As a reminder, we do have a set of frequently asked questions, especially if we weren't able to get to your question tonight. Please check out our frequently asked questions page at the QR code and the link in the chat, recovery.lacity.gov, where the frequently asked questions do live on a regular basis and are updated each week. Again, as a reminder, we do record these webinar sessions. We know that many people weren't able to necessarily be on for the entirety of the time, and there may be some specific questions, particularly in regards to soil testing and so forth tonight. So we encourage you to take a look at our YouTube page. You also can sign up for our next community briefing, which actually we'll be doing in partnership with the Department of Insurance. So please take a look at their link in the chat from earlier, which will be taking place on April 22nd. And we want to thank everybody for joining us this evening. Again, all previous webinar slides or webinar videos are found online at YouTube, and you can search Mayor of Los Angeles or go to the QR code on your slide. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We hope you have a lovely rest of your evening, and we'll see you next week.